Well, it's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you, Victoria. Love the Family Foundation. This was where we started. The very first time I had an opportunity to speak to a group was at the Family Foundation. That was before Glenn Youngkin and Pete Snyder and Peter Duran and Octavia Johnson had put their hands in the ring. So this is a very special opportunity for me to come back. And so I want to start by acknowledging my wife of 29 years. And she, homeschool mom of 18 years, and also a speech and debate coach. And so the reason that my kids do so well is because she's mean. She makes me cry too. And so I hope you have an opportunity to see my children. If you don't, go to my website at sergiodelapena.com and look up the Facebook clipping of our son speaking at Hanover if you didn't get a chance to see him there. So I'm very proud of my children. They're wonderful surrogates. I highly recommend it. Child labor is a wonderful thing, and it's a lot cheaper than having to pay somebody to do this. So anyway, let me start by telling you a little bit about our campaign, and then I'll get into a little bit about who I am, why I'm running. And so our campaign is doing exceedingly well. It's caught fire. We're moving in a very, very positive direction. We've got the largest number of small donors of anybody in our field. So that has been a very huge blessing because it shows that we have popular support. I'm a retired colonel, so obviously I don't have the same level of financial resourcing as some of my competitors, but that's okay. You know, we can do it the old-fashioned way. We actually have people that look at who I am, and you have to make that determination yourself. You're going to find that every one of the candidates is going to cite their conservative Christian credentials. It's up to you to make sure that that's exactly what they say. I'm not going to question any of their motives. I think all of us just need to do our own research to make that determination ourselves. So let me tell you why I'm running for governor. I'm Sergio de la Pena, and with your help, I will be the next governor. I'm running for a very simple reason. I want to protect the American dream, because Virginia is the cradle of the American experiment that's created the greatest good and opportunity for the world in the history of humanity. I have lived that American dream. I came to this country not speaking a word of English and not a politician, but that does not mean that I'm ignorant to the ways of politics. So after I finished my ROTC training, I went into the Army and I spent 30 years. I started out in Germany fighting against a potential attack by the Soviet Union of Western Europe with a potential use of nuclear weapons. Guess what? We defeated the Soviets. They don't do very well when it's a force-on-force type of thing, and President Ronald Reagan did a phenomenal job of dismantling the Soviet Union without firing a shot. They collapsed economically. Just remember that as a footnote as we continue on. I then moved on to training our partner nations in this hemisphere on how to fight against guerrilla warfare. And then later, when I was the Army attaché in Venezuela, I tracked Mr. Chavez. When he was a candidate, when he got elected to president, I was an international observer at his elections, and I was there afterwards, and I saw what he did to that country. A lot of those same ideas are being practiced here in this Commonwealth. That's the reason that I am concerned, and that's the reason that I got involved, because I understand where that's going to take us. If you head toward a tree at 60 miles an hour, and you're about 10 feet from hitting it, and you think it's not going to happen, you're wrong. If you follow the same processes, the same procedures as socialism takes you, you're going to crash into that tree. So we can't afford to do that. So after 30 years in the Army, we found out that what the Soviets, what the socialists and the communists do is what they can't win by bullets, they win at the ballot box. And that's what we're experiencing today. So in 2016, I was watching TV. I saw the possibility of a President Clinton being elected President of the United States, and I thought that's not a good idea. So as I was yelling at the TV, Vanessa told me, "You look awfully silly doing that. If you want to get involved, go ahead." So I did. I joined President Trump's campaign to do outreach to Hispanic voters. And I did 60 interviews in Spanish from May to November of 2016. And guess what? We won in 2016 by 29% of the Hispanic votes, and even more in 2020. So what I found is that the Hispanic vote is out there and it can be expanded. So what happens after that? Out of the blue, by the grace of God, I get a call that says, how would you like to join the transition team? So President Trump invited me to the Pentagon to be part of that endeavor. And then a few months later, I was designated by him to be the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Western Hemisphere Affairs, which means I had defense responsibility from the North Pole to the South Pole and a little bit of the Atlantic and Pacific of this side of the world for the Pentagon. It was a fantastic job. So let me go to why I think I can win. The thing that we have to ask ourselves, a fundamental question for this election cycle is, who can win in a general election? We keep putting forth the same type of candidates and we keep losing. That's the definition of insanity. We have to expand our voter base. We cannot continue to do the same thing. We've not kept track of the demographics of Virginia. If you look at Northern Virginia, which we must win, at least peel off enough to be able to win, you have 20% of that population that is now Hispanic. And you've got 17% of the population that's Asian. And then we have the black community that a lot of it is conservative, but they kind of keep it quiet. They need to also come back and expand our base. And then on top of that, we have the military community. So let's talk about the Hispanic immigrant community first. I am that community. I can relate to that community in English. I can relate to that community in Spanish because I am that community. None of the other candidates can do that. I'm also very cognizant of what the Asian communities experience because I've talked to them repeatedly and we talk about what's happening to the United States, especially here in Virginia, where we become the test bed of bad ideas. And so they know what it is that we're confronting and they don't want to be a part of a communist society. So I understand and I can appreciate that. Other candidates cannot because they've not lived the experiences that I have in 60 different countries where I've seen different models of how communism takes over. And on the military side, I can relate to the military community because I spent 30 years doing it. I can also relate to the rest of Virginia because I know what it is to work in the fields, to drive those trucks, to drive those tractors, to do all of that kind of work that your everyday working men and women in Virginia do. So what I ask for you to consider is I want to take the opportunity to put my experience to work for you so that our children and grandchildren afford the same opportunities that I had. I want for you to join me in protecting this American dream. Said differently, les pido que me acompañen en esta misión para proteger el sueño americano. So I ask that you give me some support here as we go down the final stretch. I ask for your vote, and I ask to be the next governor of Virginia. So what I want to do is, I don't want to go into this long-winded thing. What I want to be able to do and what I enjoy the most is be able to answer your questions. Whatever questions are on your mind, let me know. And as long as I'm given the opportunity, let me know how much time I've got. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Yes, sir. Ma'am, I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am.
I have an interesting question. Maybe. I was wondering if you'd be open-minded about eliminating Virginia's right to work standard. There's plenty of people who can work but can't because of that.
Well, explain to me how they don't work because of the Right to Work Act.
Well, they have the right to hire you and fire you at will. There's not many places that will look out for you if you get fired or things.
Yeah, I know what she's talking about. Yeah, basically a lot of companies just kind of like abuse it and will just kind of fire you. I've, like, for usually no reason, like, I've worked at places where, like, I got fired because the boss just didn't like me. Not because I did the job poorly or anything. They just didn't like me, things like that. If you have a disability, it's really hard. Things like that, like I think she was saying that.
Yeah, I have a lot of physical problems, like disability things, at a certain
Okay, so let me address that question. So this is my belief on how you produce wealth in a society. Wealth is the product of human creativity in a free environment. By the way, that's not my quote. That actually came from Lou Rockwell, which my wife taught in economics to our children. And so what I would say to you is that I believe in right to work, because I do not believe that the labor unions should be forced upon workers. I am not of the belief that we should eliminate right to work. I am a supporter of right to work, because I think that right now, especially with the situation we've been up against, where the governor shut down a bunch of small businesses for no good reason other than he had the power to do so, because if you look at the science, it's not there to shut these businesses. We need to open up. We need to open up businesses. We need to open up the schools. We need to get things up and running. The more we have small companies, small businesses, even big businesses doing what they do best, which the business of America is to create wealth. And once you create that wealth, there's more opportunities and there's competition for work. And if somebody fires you and you have skill sets that you can take to somebody else, there's more jobs out there that you can compete for. So that's my philosophy on right to work. Yes, sir.
My question addresses post-convention. I've noticed through most of the candidates, it appears that they're sedate, very proper what they say, and you fall into that also. You're very knowledgeable and everything. But my question to you is, do you have the fire and ability to go up against McCollum, say in a debate, to go after him for the kill?
Well, let me tell you, I mean, I'm just because I don't yell and scream. And
No, I'm not saying that. It's just that it's pointed, boom, you got him. If he's vulnerable, you go in just like a predator and kill him.
so let me tell you what I think we need to do. The governor, as Victoria's pointed out, sorry about that. So, I was thinking Virginia. I love this thing. Victoria's. So the thing about being governor is that you do control boards, and you do control regulations, and you do control the budget. The first thing I would do as your governor is I'm going to get rid of everybody that I can get rid of, because that sends the message. That's how you get it started. Because people need to understand how you set the tone, and then you start looking at regulations across the board, and you start looking at every executive order that exists, and you get rid of it, and you start afresh. Because we need to turn this thing around. Why do you think I'm running? I am serious when I say that Virginia has become the test bed of bad ideas. These are socialist ideas that are designed to destroy Virginia. Why? Because, as I said, this is the cradle of the American experiment. What you want to do is you want to discredit Virginia and her history, because this is the core of the United States. This is the country that has given me the greatest opportunity of anybody in the world. And the uniqueness of my American dream is that I am not unique. How many of you have been living an American dream? Exactly. There's no other country in the world. There's no Mexican dream. There's no French dream. There's no Russian dream. There's no China dream. They have something that they think it is, but it's dream in quotes. And so only in the United States, to put it into perspective, the Anglos and the Saxons took 300 years to become one people. I am an American of Mexican descent. I'm very proud of my Mexican heritage, but I'm an American first. And when I served 30 years in the Army defending this country, I think I've earned that. And so if you think that Terry McAuliffe is going to say that to me, give him a try. Let me give you another example. I recently did an interview, and they asked me, you know, you come at your position because you come to it from a position of privilege. I said, okay, tell me about what you mean by privilege. I said, have you ever picked cotton at 10 years old? He said, no. I said, do you know that at the end of the day your fingertips bleed? Just part of the job, that's what you do. So tell me how you're going to cancel me. You want to talk about privilege, let's talk about privilege. The privilege that I got is I had the opportunity to work. I had the opportunity to join the U.S. Army that trained me on how to lead men and women and how to manage resources. Am I ready for Terry McAuliffe? Yes. Here's the other thing. It may not be Terry McAuliffe. What happens if it's Jennifer Carroll Foy? She's going to tell you about her sad story about how she grew up in Petersburg. Well, we'll compare sad stories. I'm happy to do it. Let's do it.
That's a foreign country.
So, I hope I answered your question.
All right, I'm assuming you do have the fire and ability to take it to him, to go in.
Thank you.
Go in there. All right.
I've
I
met
just
him.
want to know that.
He's not a nice person.
No, he's not. He's not at all.
Please.
Any other questions?
Yes, sir.
Hey, Sergio, I asked you this question before, but I'm important to help advertise for other people that hear there. What will be your stance on taking out local policies and other agendas in schools and universities?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Your stance?
Yeah, he asked, what was your stance on taking out liberal agendas in schools?
You mean something like critical race theory?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's talk about that. This is part of that indoctrination process that I'm talking about. Critical race theory is nothing more than to make you, who have lighter skin than me, feel like you're guilty of sins that you've committed. So you're being told to do an act of contrition for sins not committed. That is ludicrous, that is idiotic, and we need to stop it. We need to push back. This is nuts. By the way, critical race theory. Let's talk about critical race theory. What is it based on? It's based on Marxism. What is Marxism? What has it brought to this world in the last century? 60 million dead by Mao. Why don't we ever talk about Mao? The Obamas used to put him on their little Christmas decorations. 60 million dead. He was responsible for those deaths. Stalin, 20 million dead, not including those that died in World War II. Those are his own people. Pol Pot, 1.5 million. And then we can go down the list, Mengistu, Castro, all these other knuckleheads. All of these guys are responsible for many deaths. That's what communism brings. If you want to read about it, there's a book called The Black Book of Communism. That is where critical race theory has its genesis. If you want to talk about critical race theory, let's put it into perspective. There's nothing wrong with a good bad example. Critical race theory is that good bad example.
Second question, I'm sorry. About the critical race thing. The money we give to universities, because my daughter went to Mary Washington, and I had influence on her until she went there. She came back as a Bernie bro. And since we give them money, are you going to work to try to get rid of these professors who are doing, indoctrination rather than teaching?
Yes, with one proviso. The board of visitors, all that kind of stuff, I think the governor can get rid of those too. We need to clean house, and we need to start with people that are more aligned, and we need to get parents more attuned to what their children are learning. I'll give you an example. You're in the same, we were kind of able to do a little chiropractic movement on our son's head when he came back from UVA. Now, I love UVA. I mean, UVA is, that's Thomas Jefferson's place. I mean, I can't be critical of Mr. Jefferson because, here you have before you, by the grace of God, someone who didn't speak a word of English, who's now applying for the job filled by Patrick Henry, Thomas Jefferson, and James Madison. I mean, it's a wonderful institution, but it's gone a little bit wacky. And so what we need to do is start by eliminating the boards. The thing I would ask all of you as parents to do is, you've got a checkbook, say, hey, this doesn't work. So it's got to be a constituent and a governor kind of a thing where we need to start saying, let's work the curriculum. And we need to do that all the way down to the elementary schools, because the elementary school is where it starts. That's the way indoctrination starts. Guess what? The first thing Chavez did when he became president? He changed the curriculum of all the schools. And it was all this nonsensical stuff that had nothing to do with learning math. It was all about indoctrination. The doctors that the Cubans used to expand their propaganda, if you try to certify them in the countries that they go to, they don't do so well. They're always talking about, the Cubans are so kind because they send the doctors. Well, the doctors aren't that well trained because they're more into indoctrination, and a lot of them aren't even doctors. They're out there to find out what everybody else is doing. And oh, by the way, the government keeps all their salaries. So this is what we've got to look forward to when you talk about socialism applied. These are the concerns that I have, and this is the reason that we don't need to have it here. Somebody else had a question? Yes, ma'am.
What's your task or plan for fighting back against vaccine victims?
Well, that's an excellent question. As governor, there's not going to be any vaccine mandates. I believe in medical freedom. Now, I also believe that if you have a vaccine that is available, it should be available to everybody. And guess what President Trump did? He used Army processes to be able to get the 3 different types of vaccines mass produced and distributed all over the place. That went through the former commander of the Army, not Navy or Air Force, just not that I'm jealous or anything. It was the Army, a material command commander who did that job in Operation Warp Speed. So have it available to everybody. We have a lot of smart, capable guys and gals in Virginia because this is the brain trust of the country. We know how to do this stuff. We can distribute it, but, and it's a big but, that is, you do not mandate vaccinations. If you don't want to take the vaccine, don't take it. Vaccine passports, not in this Commonwealth. And then if you start having this conversation with other states, you can have the same conversation. Now, I'm not anti-vax. I think that if you want to take it, and there's people that are vulnerable, take it. Understand what the risks are across the board, but do not make it mandated.
Okay, you probably need to make this. Anything else? All right.
All right, thank you very much.